Well, you know, it's really important that we push back. And I've seen this especially in the past 2 years, but really 6 since Donald Trump was elected. Yeah. This idea that if you criticize white people, if you say that you don't care about white people, that you're not interested in them, you don't need them, whatever, people are like, stop being so racist. And they say this like they believe it passionately. Like they're not just f***ing around. They're like, they genuinely are like, you're being racist against me. And I'm always like, Biff, come on. Please, please with your little khakis, stop, stop.
It's like, is that a kink? Because I can.
You know, well, I think that many white people have had it so good, even if they don't recognize it, that they're desperately seeking oppression. They want to be able to claim suffering.
Yeah.
And so they'll say things like, that's racist, or I grew up working class, etc. And this is why you guys should learn about intersectionality.
Yeah.
Your working class experience is true, and there's lots to talk about, and I'm happy to listen, but it's not the same as a black person's working class experience, or a Native American person's working class experience. And so we have to look at like the complications, and they're not interested. They're just like, I've suffered, therefore I can't have any privilege. When in fact we all have privilege, especially if we're sitting in this room today.
Very much.
You can afford a ticket to be here. We're on this stage. We know oppression, yes, but I think both of us would admit we have immense privilege. And that's, if everyone would just be more comfortable acknowledging their privilege instead of using it as a shield of, I know pain, therefore I cannot acknowledge systemic racism. I mean, it's pathetic. And it really is time to move past that. And that's why when white people come to cry at me about like being racist, I'm like, yes,
yeah.
I am.
I love that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement in America. What do you see as the similarities between Australia and the US when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, women are leading it, for sure. And I think that in both countries, there is this demand that's not going to go away, that we address the systemic issues of police brutality, mass incarceration, the devaluing of the black family. Yeah. And so I think it's the same goals, different origin stories for the goals, but actually not that different.
No.
And so there is a lot of common ground there. And I would not have thought that before I started coming to Australia. And then when I got here, and when I travel to places, I do try to like read a little and know a little bit. And the more I learn, the more I recognize like really we're fighting the same fight in the very same ways. And it's an overwhelming fight.
It is.
It's just the kind of thing, you know, I flew in yesterday, and Australia is a really hard country to get into.
Once upon a time it wasn't, though. We should have maybe been a bit stricter a couple of hundred years ago.
I mean, you know, like, especially when you come here for work, they're like, how much money's in your bank account? Prove that you have health insurance. And it's like, you think I want to stay? Like, I'm going, I mean, to my own hole. Like, it's fine. But I was filling out the declaration card to come into the country. It's standard. The United States is equally toxic, so I'm not comparing the two. But it was like, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And I was like, you guys brought a penal colony here. What on earth? And that's like when you're reminded that there are these systemic issues, like they're encoded into absolutely every aspect of the country. Yeah. And so like that's the other thing that I see connecting Black Lives Matter both here and in the US. Like it's just baked into everything.
I was having this conversation. I did the podcast Debutante, which is First Nations debutante balls around Australia, and we went over to the States, especially to the South, where they also had a tradition of black debutante balls. And I was talking to this woman, I think it was the Auburn Street Market. It's down the street from the church that Martin Luther King Jr. preached at, like his family preached at. And I was sitting there, it was this amazing moment where we were talking about our grandmothers and this obsession with cleanliness. And I think this obsession with cleanliness being so linked to trauma, this fear of white people using any excuse to, in a way, take away your children.
Yes.
And that was something that my family grew up with. You know, it was my mother's generation that they used to inspect Aboriginal children and take them away. And they still forcibly remove them, but now they put it under, you know, enshrine it into family law. But it was this really, it's that we have these, you know, these big systematic issues, but the way that they mutate and perpetuate in your own personal experience, so incredibly common. It just really blew me away. Now, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think it's integral to feminism and where we're at now? And if so, why?
Well, yes, absolutely. I think any movement to decolonize and to address racism has to inherently be feminist. And feminism needs to recognize that, which, quite frankly, mainstream feminism often does not. Because anytime we leave anyone behind, then we haven't really achieved anything. You know, a lot of times people just think feminism is equality. And my mom loves to say, what is that even? Mm-hmm. And she talks about it in the context of marriage, because she and my dad have been married for it'll be 50 years this year. And, you know, she was like, there's no such thing as equality in a marriage. Sometimes I did 30% and your father did 70% outside the home. And sometimes that, you know, that was switched around, and that's just life. And I think that we have to recognize that same thing in terms of like what we want as feminists, that it's not just about sort of being able to act like men and behave like men. And I'll make those jokes sometimes because they're fun. But are we really like aiming that low? Yeah. And are we really trying to perpetuate the cycles that have oppressed us?
Yes.
And have given us, you know, like lesser of everything? And I think, you know, which is why Kim Kardashian will show her ass and say things like, people don't want to work. You know, if we don't just address all of it at once, so what if we address gender equality while Black people don't have any rights? Like, then that feminism is absolutely meaningless. And that's why you have to look at the intersections and recognize that fighting for Black lives means you are fighting for women, because Black women are women. And fighting for disability justice is feminism, because there are women with disabilities, and so on. And so I just think every social justice movement has to be of deep concern to feminism. And it can be exhausting and overwhelming. And a lot of times young feminists will say, but like, that's just so much to take on. Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. And that's why you don't do it in one day, and you don't do it alone. And you remember that you have to care for yourself as much as you care for others. But to do nothing, I mean, look what nothing has gotten us, and it's nothing good.